And we want to welcome our first guest of the day, Sheriff Garrett Scott. And
Good
please,
to see you guys. It's a hot day.
Yeah. If you could please kind of give the public a general rundown of the sheriff and coroner operations and what it all entails, the different budgets that you cover, as well as your personnel. Where you are and where you're supposed to be.
You bet. We'll go over, I put a few notes together just to talk about kind of the overview of the sheriff's office between some of the requests that I have in for court security, bailiffing, civil division, and then of course we have animal control, field operations, search and rescue, and so forth. But I think most importantly with that, you should have all the asks coming to you. Some measure are, some not. But I just want to reiterate the staffing levels of the sheriff's office still are down, and I got some new stats together that I thought were pretty interesting, and I'm not going to go into a tirade about pay, but I'm just going to talk about the challenges that all sheriffs are having right now across the state. But for Delaware County alone, in 2014, the staffing for the field operations was 24, and correctional was 10, and it goes downhill from there. And we're currently at 14 sworn deputies and 10 correctional officers, and I think we're down a little bit more since Diane and I put this together. But just to give an idea and let the public know that we're still fielding 15,000 calls per year. We're still booking 2,060 inmates per year in our county jail. Whether we keep them or not, that's how many come through. And I think that's important that to know that about every 3 months we're booking about 500 to 600 people in the county jail, and that's currently being done with 9 correctional officers. So the difficulty is really there, and every sheriff in the state's dealing with this also, and trying to combat these issues. But I think in order to come to some success with staffing, we're gonna have to really stay on task with our strategic plan and our comp study. And when that comp study comes in, we're gonna have to react, and we're gonna have to react quickly. The reason why is, from my standpoint, and I did put this in the sheriff's office strategic plan, is that we've got to send local people to the academies so that we can retain them. But what I need from the board is I need to be able to retain them. And we've all seen these recent statistics. A $295,000 home, it's going to cost, it's going to be a $39 an hour employee to be able to afford that home. So just to give you an idea, that retention is going to be tough. But I think if we stick local and we continue to hire local people, we're going to get there. But that's where we're at now. And so with 1 deputy on per shift, maybe 2 possibly, we should have quite a few more. It makes things really difficult. And but that's kind of an overview of that. I wanted to bring the coroner cases and the overdose deaths, but I didn't bring it, so I'll email it out. I think you guys have seen it recently anyway, but so that's it. And then any questions you guys might have about any of these different budgets, feel free to ask. We're an open book. We should be right on the money with them.
I just wanted to say to please be cognizant of speaking into the mic, because the people online can't hear you if you don't speak into it.
Thank you.
And with that, we'll start with your 231 budget. That's the general sheriff's budget. Any questions from the board as to 231?
Mr. Chairman, I got a quick clarifying question. Sheriff, when you were just speaking about staffing, I believe I heard you say 2014. Did you mean 2024? And what were the stats again that you gave for your staffing?
So
I apologize if I misheard that.
That's fine. I could have inverted it. In 2014, there was 24 sworn and 11 correctional staff.
Okay.
2024, at the time of this survey, there was 14 sworn and 10 correctional officers. And we have stats for each year in between. And it's slowly moved down. Now, there's a lot of questions that come with that. You know, there's been a lot of effort to raise pay, right, over the years. Obviously, you guys have all seen that. But in order to stay ahead of it, I think it's a huge piece. There's other pieces of the pie for retention, morale, good equipment, those kind of things. But we're in a big fight over this, and so is every board and every sheriff in the state with this. But how do you compete with it? How do you get ahead of it? And how do you retain these people? So it is a good question. I'm glad you asked. And then what was your other question about booking?
No, not about booking. I just misunderstood your correlation between 2014 and 2024. So I appreciate you clarifying that for me. That's all I had for.
Well, I'm sure you're going to have more, but
yeah, as far as the initial statement goes, that's all I had.
but if we could stay on this topic, so you have currently 14 as of the date that you prepared this survey or this information. You have 14 sworn officers. Are you budgeted in this budget for the 24 sworn officers? Okay, so you continue to budget for 24 sworn officers, yet you haven't filled those probably since even 2014.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, that to me is, and do you have any ideas on what to do the retention? I mean, other than you're saying, $39 an hour, I don't know that that's going to be possible, but do you have any other ideas on how to do the retention? Because if we're down 10 sworn deputies, and we're having to only have one deputy per shift or two deputies per shift, what's your plan?
Well, to get them hired, we're going to have to send people to the academies. And that's fairly successful, but it takes 6 months. Well, say it takes 4 or 5 months to recruit. It takes 6 months to go through academy. It takes another 4 months to go through an FTO process. So maybe we try to send another 5 to the next academy. I mean, we have 1 in there now. We sent 3 last time. We lost 1. Hiring, that's what we're gonna have to do. But the retention piece is something that it'll be interesting to see what the comp study says. That's gonna be a big piece of it. But the retention part of it is gonna be, how can these folks afford to buy a home and raise a family? I mean, someone that's been, in my opinion, someone that's been in an agency or a sheriff's office for 5 or 6 years, they want to start a family. They want to buy a home, right? Or they're gone. Maybe sooner with this generation, they have a little bit different mindset. But I don't necessarily, I'm not saying that we need to be paying $39 an hour, but I think we need to think about that. There's a lot of things that, and I'm hoping the comp study will show it, but can we pay a little bit more of their benefits or their insurance or these kind of things that take a lot of piece, or their PERS contributions to make the check look bigger? Can we offer stipends every 3 months? Can we reduce some staffing to increase? There's a lot of things that we can do. A lot of this stuff, what happens to me is I fall into legal issues getting involved in it because the union is there. So that's where, I have to leave that to you guys to come up with those. I can throw ideas out, but I do have to be really careful with those. And there's a lot of reasons why we can't do certain things too. And I think everybody gets that. So I think morale is very, very good right now. I think we've done an excellent job of retaining the people that we want to retain, the people that want to be here. They're getting the appropriate training. They're really standing up and working hard. And so our future looks very well as long as we continue. And I applaud you guys for the strategic plan and the comp study. I think it's going to be really beneficial. Once we get that, finding money to do things is obviously going to be difficult, but that's kind of my stance.
I think it's worthwhile to note, though, that while it may cost us more, how much is it really costing this community to not have those services available? I mean, I think that's just something to note, is that when we're staffed for 24, but we only have 14, number one, you know, we're just not responding to crimes. And, you know, I get my news from Facebook, everybody knows that. And when you see on Facebook that it took over an hour for the deputy to respond, only
Right.
simply because there are no deputies to respond. So it comes at a cost somewhere.
You're absolutely right. If you have 2 deputies that are outside the county area, maybe Klamath or Gasky, and something happens in town, and that's all you have on hand, it's going to take them 40 minutes or so to get to town, especially if they have a prisoner in the car. Then, and so it's a real challenge to try to solve that. And there's sheriff's offices across the state that don't have 24-hour coverage anymore. There's Tehama County shut down day shift patrol. When you look into those options, as soon as your shift starts for the evening, your deputies are inundated. And so your morale is going to dive because you're going to put so much on their plate as opposed to doing what you can for the day. I think it's pretty clear, you know, with our homicides and our major cases over the last couple of years, we're surviving it. We're doing an absolutely outstanding job with that, convictions. But I think the community deserves better. That's my opinion. And I think there's a way to approach it, and I feel like it's an emergency to me. But there's a lot of things going on that are happening that aren't really within our control. You know, the fentanyl problems that's coming up, and the homeless issues and things like that. They're difficult to deal with, and they require special people. And maybe, you know, that's another conversation. Homeless liaison deputy, things like that. But and I think we'll get there. But that's just my opinion.
Why was only one person in the pipeline for the academy on this last round? First time there was 3, now was only 1.
Yeah,
Is that-
the last one. So we had sent the 3, and then we got so close to the next academy and the deadlines that I wasn't able to do a super good recruitment for this last academy. It was okay, but we did not get near the applicants. And what I learned, and you know, you learn lessons in life, but when you put those Facebook posts out to the public and you really push, you get a lot more applicants. But with those academies only 6 months apart, I had to wait. So here in a month or so, we'll probably recruit, hopefully for 4 or 5 for the next academy. And so it was a little bit of a learning curve when you're having to send folks to the academy, because you're not just saying, hey, you're hired, go to the academy. You're setting up an apartment for them. You're setting up food and travel and, you know, their specialty uniforms and all those different things. There's a lot to it. And then, of course, the process itself it takes time. So, and, you know, I was really hopeful that we would pull some laterals, you know, but it just didn't. We grabbed Lucas Britton from Humboldt County, but, you know, he came because we offered a K-9. And he's doing phenomenal. But so that's kind of why. Hopefully this next go around we'll send 4 or 5. And
so you're thinking that if you promote it enough, give enough time, there's plenty of potential candidates. It's just a matter of fine tuning the process and learning the ins and outs.
that's a complex question, because what comes to mind when you ask that is how many applicants phase out when they apply. And I would say 85 to 90% won't pass a background. And those are industry standards for different convictions or driver's license violations, things like that just automatically eliminate them. You know, they've got to have a medical exam, they've got to have a psychological exam, all kinds of different things before you can even consider putting a gun on their hip and a badge on them. So it's really tough. My goal is to hire straight out of our jail, but the folks, there's a few folks left from our jail that might be interested in going to the academy in the future, but the majority of them are people that have been around for a few years and they want to stay in the jail. So if we can continue to hire local people in our jail also and retain them, then, you know, it's all kind of a funnel, and we're getting there, but we're not there yet.
Can you refresh my memory on the, we have a program where the county is paying for the academy? Do we have that program when you say that
Yeah.
we're getting them set up? I for some reason, it's out of my memory. So is that?
We have what's called a recruit program, a deputy recruit. So when we hire them, we don't make them a full-on deputy. They're a deputy recruit. They're not sworn.
And it's a lower pay rate.
It's a much lower pay rate.
Okay.
And then they go through the academy and through a field training program when they get back from the academy. And when they graduate that FTO program is when they start the program, they're deputies. But once they graduate it, then they're on the road by themselves and so
Okay.
forth.
And your goal is to get more local people into that deputy recruit process because you feel local people will have already had some roots here established.
Yeah, we're unique. We're kind of in an area that it's difficult to attract people here, especially a younger generation. Come to Del Norte County and be a deputy. It may be appealing to some, but we were not successful when we did a huge push, you know, a few years back. It was all locals that put in for that. And they're the ones that are going to stay, the local people with families or children here, those kind of things. And that's what we want. We want deputies that know folks and understand the dynamics of each different district or those kind of things. I mean, that when you do that, then one or two deputies responding to a call, somebody's going to know them or grew up with them and trust them. And that's the important part, is that building that trust so that people feel safe in the county.
Did you have more? I was going to just move on to your overtime, and I know we've talked about it. I've mentioned it to the auditor controller. The overtime that is listed on these budgets that we have is only $14,000, and that clearly is a mistake that needs to be corrected. I think your year to date for this last fiscal year was 417 as of May. So I'm assuming that your overtime needs to be corrected. Just as a reminder, it'll impact the overall budget.
It has been, just to let you know, Supervisor.
Oh, it has?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
I did have that question, and Nancy already answered it. It was a typo, so it has been corrected.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
So in some of the overall payroll and salary is just a little over $4 million. And I just want to say that seems like a lot of money, but I really do believe that budgets tell a story about the priorities of a community. And I think that some of this is already showing that the priority of this community is public safety. So while that seems like a tremendous amount, our safety and the sheriff's department being healthy and fully staffed is very important. So I just wanted to say that with regard to the payroll and the salaries and the benefits, because the benefits obviously are going to be more for a sworn safety officer than for non-sworn. So that's all I had to say.
I just had a couple of questions for you, Sheriff. You mentioned that we lost one during Academy. Did they just get washed out, or?
No, they didn't pass probation. They
okay.
failed out. Yeah.
And that's probably happens
It happens.
relatively decent. I shouldn't say decent. Relatively often.
Oh yeah, that's a common thing. You know, when you're hiring young people, they don't have a lot of experience. Sometimes they get into these careers and they realize halfway through an academy it's not for them. You know, it could be driving, it could be shooting, it could be an academy instructor showing videos of having to shoot somebody or wrestle with somebody, or defensive tactics where they take a punch to the face and they've never been in a fist fight in their life. I mean, that's the reality of it. You know, on. So you do lose a few that way.
Yeah, thank you. I just
Yeah,
wanted to
you bet.
illustrate that to the folks who are listening. Also, you mentioned having one deputy on, and you mentioned real quickly, if you have to respond to another call and you have a prisoner in the back, I think that's something that is worth mentioning. That I wanted to illustrate that our deputies are probably responding to a pretty serious call on one end of the county and get another very serious call on the other end. So they hurry up, have the person in cuffs. I'm just going to put you in the car. We'll book you in. We'll sort this out later because we have an emergency, a real, true emergency on the other end of the county. So here you are transporting a detainee to this next call. And that is totally not ideal. Completely not ideal by the furthest stretch of the imagination. I just wanted to bring that out, really out in the open, because it probably happens a lot more than people realize, because we are so short-staffed. So I just wanted to make that comment, but also wanted to ask you a question. You said every county in California is struggling with this problem of retention and recruitment. But I thought I had heard of counties that had some successes with recruitment, retention, staffing. Can you expand on any of those? Do you know of any of those? I thought you had told me that there was some that had tried some things and were successful. So I'd like for you to.
Yeah, I just came back from a legislative conference for Cal sheriffs, and there is a lot of creativity going on to hire and retain. It all costs money, and it all is hard decisions. But one in particular was, I think it was Lake County. Don't quote me on that, but it was one of the northern counties. And what they ended up having to do was reduce staff, vacant positions. And those were vacant positions that had been vacant for a number of years. They just literally did away with so many positions to increase that pay. And there were some other components to it also. I know I'll bounce back and forth a little bit, but like Vallejo Police Department, they're supposed to have 132 sworn. They currently have 71. So some sheriffs and some police departments, there was one recently that did something similar. I think it was Sutter Police Department, one of those. They did the same thing. They had to reduce some staff and increase pay because they were similar. And the reason I researched them was just because they're similar to us, where you have Caltrans, Pelican Bay, a lot of higher paying state organizations around you. And they were able to attract more. They also had a lot of smaller police departments around them too. And they were all in competition. So once that little police department that was down to 3 or 4 police officers made that change, they were able to attract, whether that was send some more people to the academy or whatnot, a few laterals. But those are a few success stories. The biggest part is, you might have a sheriff like the Mendocino County Sheriff that just absolutely says, we better do something. Things are terrible. Merced County Sheriff Vern Wernke, went to his board and said, I'm issuing tons and tons of CCW permits and people are scared and things are bad. It's not anyone's fault. Like these sheriffs aren't throwing this at the bottom of the Board of Supervisors' feet to say you caused this. They're saying we need help and we've all got to figure it out. So we're dealing with a huge issue and there are some success stories. You're absolutely right. And I think those are things that we really do have to look at. But there's consequences to all those options.
Yeah. So you pretty much anchor that on pay rate and being able to support yourself and your family as a deputy. That's basically what their basing their successes on?
Yeah, it's all about pay, especially with the new generation. It's that paycheck. It's that dollar amount. It really is. It's not like the first paycheck we all probably got that was $600 or something. Now it's about money. And we did it. We taught all our kids go where the money's at, right? So I don't blame them, but that's their mentality.
Yeah, I can't say I didn't do it myself.
Yeah.
I can tell you with working with police officers on the street, I would much rather have one experienced officer making good decisions than having multiple, I guess, rookies, if you want to call them that,
Right.
making decisions that aren't exactly experienced. I know me personally, I started a career here, and then it came to be where my wife and I couldn't support our family on my paycheck, so we had to make a decision, and it wasn't that I wanted to continue with my chosen career, but I went to the prison where the money was at. So
Right.
did a career there, and can't say we didn't do well. So I'm thankful for that opportunity, but at the same time, I certainly relate to the situation where you have to make a decision. Are we going to make a living here, or are we going to have to go somewhere else? So, I had another question.
Can I ask about this, other counties
Certainly.
without interrupting? Have we crunched those numbers here to see how that would work? Have you proposed, because I don't know how many you could, delete, but have you crunched the numbers to see if that pencils out for Del Norte County?
Yeah, we have. We've penciled those numbers out and variations, and Nancy, of course, can speak to that even more if you want. But we've penciled those numbers out. We've penciled out some stipend options or retention pay options. They're all just options. And whether you want to deal with the consequences of unfunded liabilities and those kind of things, it makes it difficult. But when you look at staffing charts and you look at the difficulty we're going through, how do you address the issue? And I really hope that with the comp study, number one, that will outline some of that as well. I don't know if they would make a recommendation like that, but I think there's some difficult decisions there to make, and it's time. We're going to have to do something, because the amount of money that you put into one deputy over the years, sending them to training and their time and their certificates and their bonuses, and it's really sad to see one go that you put all that time and effort into, and it's built a good reputation in the county that the people trust and know they can go to them for help. And to see them go after 4 or 5 years because they can go to, Mendocino County or Yuba and make $42 walking in the door. Don't get me wrong. I know we can't pay that, but that's what we're up against. $42 walking in the door at Yuba, Lake County, 30, I think it was 38 walking in the door. So, yeah, it's a tough one.
Yeah, I'd love to see the numbers crunched, but so if you guys could send that our way, I would appreciate seeing those numbers.
Sure.
Sheriff, I didn't talk to you about this earlier, forewarn you on this. You and I have attended a lead-in meeting where I kind of proposed to try and get a collective drug task force kind of idea between the different law enforcement agencies. Lieutenant Roach at CHP said, yes, absolutely, we'd be under that. We absolutely do not have the staffing to do that. City Police was fully staffed. Yes, absolutely, we'd be into that. You guys pull it together, we'll be on. Sheriff's Department can't do it because we're understaffed. Parks was kind of online. you guys pull it together. If you guys can get the staffing, we'd love to participate kind of thing. So it seems like that it was hinging on staffing, getting something like that rolling. We've talked about, like I say, drugs and human trafficking that's going on from what we hear, at the end of Waldo and places in our county. I think people think about human trafficking and they think of about that big organizational picture and don't really think that it's happening in our county, and it truly is. So the question I have for you is if we were to do something like you're talking about and reduce staffing and increase pay in that reduced staffing organizational chart, would we be able to still work to reduce drugs and these other really atrocities that are going on in our county? Or would we just be skating by with a kind of a skeleton crew?
That's I think that our canines currently, I'd like to get another canine. There is funding for that, but finding a deputy to fill those shoes is difficult. So if I could find someone that wants to do canine, whether it's a lateral or not, I'll be here at the podium asking for those funds to be released. But I just haven't found anybody for that yet. So, and as you guys know, with our Facebook posts and so forth, that's the only drug enforcement really that's going on is our canines. And we have one, and he's absolutely phenomenal. But I'd like to get another. Now, as far as a drug unit, there are some resources to fund those positions and different ways to do that. I do have 2 employees that have worked the narcotics division prior, so we do have people with quite a bit of experience in that area. And so it is the PD. Well, you were in one of the meetings where they don't have the bandwidth or the people to do that. CHP, CCPD, parks. But I think, and I really feel that if we are the lead on that, and if we are able to find 1 or 2 people, and one of them, say a supervisor and a deputy, and they start showing the production of what we're getting, and we start working on asset forfeiture, which, we've gotten a little bit, but there is a lot out there. Then I think that those organizations would be more eager to join up and be a part of that. But we just got to get to that point. Now, the reduction in staffing would cause a little bit of a hindrance for that, but I don't see it as a huge major challenge. I think depending on what kind of reduction you did, that it could be difficult, but I do think would still be somewhat doable.
Thank you, Sheriff. Appreciate that.
You all done?
With just that.
Okay.
Well, I
the
do
only
have
questions
some
I've got-
line by line questions, but that's
Well,
always small potatoes.
that's what we're doing. My question is on your equipment lines. You've had some, especially vehicles in the past, but you don't have any for this year. Is there no rolling stock needed this year?
So there's no vehicles this year because of the amount of time that it took us to get the vehicles. So even the vehicles that I ordered last February, I'm hopeful to get them by the end of September. And so it's just a matter of them taking
Availability and okay. And then I just looking at these lines, you're looking at lines that are usually consistently within dollars being asked annually, but nothing this year. Congratulations on negotiating your contract with City Dispatch Services. That was a necessary change. And then if you can just briefly go over what the Measure R funds that you're receiving this year are going for.
Thank you. I had those same questions.
You guys want to know about the Measure R funds that we're asking? Is that what you're saying?
What are your Measure R funds revenues? You got $500,000 in revenue coming in from Measure R. I know some of it is is for the salary differential, the pay increase. Some of it is for what dispatcher and one other position, but any other dollars that Measure R is funding this year going towards you in those 500,000.
In this particular budget, it is for salaries and then the ongoing support for search and
Okay,
for that.
gotcha.
So is that those line items? Oh, there's 20225, which is office supplies, and then 20302, which is utilities. Is that what you're saying, Nancy? Is that is supporting search and rescue? Yes, thank you. Appreciate that.
Let's move on to your 242 then. Any questions about the jail budget?
My questions are going to be just kind of broad, nothing very specific. But, you know, you have inspections every year by the BSCC or biannually, I'm not sure how often. And those have been somewhat concerning from years past. What I'm curious to know is within the jail, what do you need in this budget in order to be able to pass those inspections, pass those things with flying colors? And I know that's broad and it's a lot. You can pick just a few things, but I'm just really curious what it is that we can do as the board, you know, to be able to set you up for success in those inspections.
Yeah, I think that's easy for me to answer because the first part would be the staffing component. That is, I mean, you're never gonna make all of your safety checks absolute by the minute, because if it's 5 minutes over, you failed that safety check. That's how that works. So if your two officers are serving chow and it takes them 4 minutes to make it down the hallway to get one safety check done, then you failed for that. And so our safety checks, this last round, we were 100% on safety checks with the exception of our safety cell. And the checks were done. We do have proof of it, but they weren't writing everyone down correctly. So that's why that was in that report. But the improvement is dramatic. It's really good. But staffing's a really big deal, and space is another really big deal because you have your WellPath component, you have your EASE program component, mental health, and a lot of these services now that we're mandated to have. And now we have CalAIM coming in, and that's an entire presentation to understand all of that. But so the space to put people, now I have space issues in the admin because I'm having to, you know, they're funneling out into admin, so I have nowhere to put people, and that need is great. A lot of the BSCC inspection things that we got dinged for last time have to do with like your compliance, your places where people can hang themselves or things like that. That because we're old and outdated, and we are so old and outdated that when BSCC walks in, they just pick up a notebook and start writing because they're used to walking into beautiful jails that are you know, perfect and $80 million or something. So we get dinged for a lot of that. But I think some of those things, and it, you know, like your grand jury report, how come these maintenance tickets aren't getting handled? Well, there's a reason for it, and a lot of it is it costs money, number one. Number two, our building maintenance structure, in my opinion, I think that we should probably consider to moving 2 full-time maintenance people to the jail that are under the sheriff's authority to operate those, because you have, you know, a lot of safety things going on, like broken glass or stuff like that, and when it's not fixed by the second year, those are kind of things that when they're on paper year after year, and we get sued, and then we end up with a consent decree or something like that, it's going to cost us a fortune. So that's what I would like to see ultimately when we can approach that, is maybe that, you know, a couple of maintenance people that are actually You know, I have cooks, I have correctional officers, I have correctional techs, mental health people. Maybe we look at that maintenance component. Most jails, the sheriff has their own maintenance people. That's how it is. Not that this county's doing it wrong. It just seems to be a little bit better fit.
Would the better fit be that then you're kind of directing what needs to get done? Is that why the better fit is? Because you have more of a, hey, these are priorities. This is me making the call that these things are priorities. Is that what make it better? I don't.
Well, you have people, maintenance workers that you send to training that's only for jails. So they understand, hey, we've got to put a flush stopper on a toilet so these people can't continue to flush things down the toilet and clog the drains, or certain things have to be clean daily, or if there's a broken window in a hallway, an inmate could grab that glass, or a broken handle where an inmate could actually pull the door open and attack someone. Those maintenance people are trained on that. And when you have every year or two a different maintenance worker coming in or things like that, they don't know all that. Our folks do fine, but I think that it would probably be a little bit better structure to have that component under the sheriff. But with that comes, then how does the sheriff direct that to get done when I don't have the budget for it? So, you know, Alan budgets for all that stuff. So it's a good conversation to have. But staffing's a big one, and you know, finding the money for remodeling and continue to work on those things, that's a big deal. It's a really big deal. And then pushing for more funds to come our way so we can keep remodeling. But hopefully that answers your question.
No, it did. And I want to just get back to the space a little bit, only because I know there's going to be new programming being mandated, as you noted, in March of 2026. And you have to be prepared for that by September of 2025. You have to have that plan in place. And that's been a concern of mine, is where are you going to provide these programs at? So I'm glad you brought it up. I do hope that that's being considered in the jail remodel and the construction and those plans, because it's a lot about forward thinking and how are we going to be able to do what the state has mandated us to do, but also it's the right thing to do. It's about, we don't want these people to be revolving doors coming into the facility. That really serves no purpose. I would love to see them at least get a helping hand up on their way out the door so that we don't see them again.
Yeah, your jails now are, your Title 15, your 24, everything has changed. Jails are more of a design for rehabilitation. The idea is that from the state level and folks, they want to see the inmates go into jail, and when they come out, they want to see them cleaned up and ready to rock and roll and have all kinds of services. The difficulty in that is the amount of staff it takes to do it, the state forcing a lot of it on us, and whether we even can do it. I mean, the reality is a lot of times there's no way. You can't do it. So, but some of them that are really important is, the CalAIM program. Some of it has to be done because otherwise we're not going to get any funding. So some of those we do have to do, but space is the biggest issue because we do have, WellPath, which is our medical, and then we have an EASE program, which we're mandated to do mental health. And then now we're going to be mandated to have quite a few more staff. Where are you going to put them? That jail is not
Where are you gonna
designed
get
for this. Right. So whether we contract with WellPath to do them, because I'm not going to find them in Delaware County. It's not going to happen. So there's a lot of difficulty with it.
And looking at that, is that outside, out-of-county medical expense, that 1.4, is that the CalAIM? I noticed the revenue was in there. Is
Yeah, that's the
that same
1.4.
CalAIM
Right.
line that you have 20233?
Yeah.
Wanting to address that sudden increase there, but I
Right.
attributed that to CalAIM.
Yeah. That
Okay,
is.
I just
that
wanted
is
to verify
CalAIM.
that as I was looking over the numbers. And that is the CalAIM grant path dollars that you've got under revenue. 90680. That attributes to that link there. I think. Oh, and then I did not see, at least in the copy that I had, recent transfer AB 109 funds to the revenue side of the jail. The ones we did yesterday. So I didn't see any accounting on that in previous years. So.
You want to ask me that one more time?
So under revenues, jail, is that where the AB 109, when usually at the end of every year, we allocate unused, unspent $109 over to the jail, but I didn't see that line in the revenue line under jail. Is it
pull it up.
somewhere else?
You know, it should be, and then let me pull it up real quick. You're going to find those are going to flow through probation. So you're going to see those coming into a 7 series line.
Okay.
So the first
okay,
one
so
is-
it's under probation line.
Well, it comes from probation to the jail because all of our AB 109 flows through probation.
right.
So 709-00742 is flash incarceration, AB 109. Budget's
Okay.
15,000 year to date. They received for last fiscal year, it's gonna be 7,600. The other large one you've mentioned is 709-02-742 AB 109 inmate cost reimbursement, and we received as of June 30 now 1.2 million, which is probably quite a bit different than what you're seeing in front of you. Those were those transfers I mentioned.
Right.
That were coming in, months behind schedule. So
Okay.
The sheets, we're showing $772,000.
Yeah.
yes, so there's another $500,000. We had another $500,000 we had transferred between printing of those documents and these meetings. That's kind of what I was referring to when we had some departments we're working with to get those transfers in on a more timely.
So my only main
manner.
concern in jail is, of course, the maintenance and the lack of attention that should be done immediately to those issues that are officer safety issues. They've existed for way far too long. They've gone undealt with, and they should be a priority. They should not be allowed to exist, period. There should be no exemptions. There should be no obfuscating this. They should just be done, because every day that they exist in that poor condition is a day that our staff is under risk, and that should not be allowed. Should not be tolerated. Shouldn't be tolerated by you, but it shouldn't be tolerated by the board. The fact that it existed at all for any length of time is without any sense, because again, these are officer safety issues and
Do we have
poor
a
condition
list?
that we have. That any of the one of my biggest frustrations is we got the $3 million to do renovations, but it's on the old side of the jail, which was exempt from BCCS. We didn't need to meet any standards over there. And we lost space because we stopped using them because we didn't have keys. We lost the keys. Where the hell did those go? I mean, it makes no sense that we have no bed utilization on some side that was exempt from having to meet any of these things. And now we're going to spend $3.5 million to renovate that side, when those aren't really the key issues that are of my concern. My concern are the officer safety issues. The lack of cameras in some cases, but it's also the broken windows and the hasp on booking doors, and the fact that we don't have a coded up holding cell for drunks. I mean, and the fact that we become a de facto mental health facility, and the condition that those individuals are maintained, and the fact that they are, because of their behavior problem, they destroy the facility. But you're also having inmates exposed to their behavior. How would you like to be living next to a psychotic day in and day out, and the screeching and the hollering and the bizarre behavior that gets, this 24/7? It doesn't lead to a safe environment for the inmates. And that is one of our priorities. And the fact that we don't have programming, I could care less, because the reality is, when AB 109 shifted and the dollars were rolling out, we couldn't meet those requirements. They know we can't meet those requirements. And yet we were forced to accept the fact that we had to hold inmates for 3 years, and sometimes longer if it's multiple minor violations. We couldn't barely program up what we had, let alone meet the needs of long-term incarceration programming. We've never had that ability, never. And we're not designed for it. Very few of the older facilities were ever designed for that. The fact that we need, yes, drastic remodeling. I asked for those AB 109 dollars for remodeling, and we didn't have the ability and the county to even pay the match for the amount of remodeling that was going to be needed. And we had designs and everything else ready to go, but we could never meet the match. And so we never qualified for any of the phase $1, $2, or $3 that came out to a lot of the facilities. And we weren't alone. More money went back to the state because counties could not construct at the amount of the grants. And so most of those dollars ended up going back to the state unused because counties could not get contractors, contracts, and get it done for the dollars that they were rolling out. So state mandates, they're great, but the fact that they don't share the reality of what we have to exist under and live under. And I'm glad we're seeing some programming returning because I think it's absolutely necessary for the inmates to have something to cause distraction, whether it's Bible study or whether it's education or whether it's just drug and alcohol training, whatever. Those kinds of things are necessary, and the fact that a lot of them went away under COVID and are just struggling to come back, that is the thing. Let's look under your coroner's budget. Is there anything that we have 8 more minutes? Anything that we have to address under the coroner's budget?
I know we're running close on time, Chair, but I was just wanting to ask the sheriff a question about the maintenance guys. Trying to step into your shoes, even though my feet are 14s, I don't think I could ever fill yours. Looking at wanting maintenance guys that were under my control, could totally understand because your priorities are what they are. Trying to put myself in the shoes of our building maintenance guy, losing a couple of guys would seem to be a concern to me. Is there a place where you think we could get where we could place 2 guys underneath your control, but at the same time, if Alan had needed a couple extra guys for a bigger project or something in the future, do you think we could find a happy medium there? I think we should move toward the direction that you're talking about is that, having those maintenance guys under your control, but could you let them go for a big project? Or do you think there's way too much going on in the jail to where you would need to have them full time forever?
Well, Alan already has, he religiously keeps one there every day because that one person is busy all day long, every day, fixing something or, that they're busy.
Just keeping it clean.
Shadow Nunes is there now, and then he has a partner that's helping him. But I think, it'd be a good discussion to have with Alan too, to figure out, what his thoughts are on that. But I think we're probably talking, he's probably going to need at least that second person. That he may use that second person that helps Shadow out, occasionally other places. But from what I've seen recently, now when I first came in, there was one person there and that was about all I saw. And then that person left and now we're at 2. Alan may come in and say, heck, that was just because we didn't have any staff, and normally he would always have 2 there. But a lot of that stuff under the sheriff's control, the ability to order some of those things and make sure that they're pushed quickly, I think is important. So I agree that Alan should be part of that conversation. And I've expressed before the same with human resources. That's something that I would look at in the future is to have someone either assigned that works for me at HR that can go to trainings to understand Peace Officer Bill of Rights and the different needs. Because your 4850 laws, everything's different for law enforcement. And it makes it really difficult. And it's difficult on HR. It's tough for them. So whether they work for HR or not, I don't know, something we need to work out. But there's some of those components. But back to the jail, I think, I believe the grand jury report's asking for an investigation into what is going on with building maintenance. They've asked for it. It's specific in there. And my response was that I don't control building maintenance, so that would fall on Board of Supervisors and whether they have correct funding and so on and so forth. However you want to handle that, that's up to you. But, it is something that we should look at, when it takes so long to fix glass and different things that are officer safety issues. And I mean, the other part too is we've got a crew that just went in and redid 2 entire dorms in old side of the jail, and it's absolutely phenomenal. I mean, if we could maintain that for a year, we would have progress like you can't believe. But how do you maintain that?
Does your budget not have a deferred maintenance category? I mean, it's shocking to me that I don't think many departments have deferred maintenance for our buildings.
Right. Most of that's all been set up many, many years ago for building maintenance to
Okay.
basically do their own thing. And whether that's right or wrong, I don't know. It's just those are some of the hiccups that I see from my standpoint. I've asked Alan to do stuff for me, and he's usually there within 3 or 4 days and getting it done. But some of those things in that jail that are more complex probably take, and he could speak to that. Ordering glass is probably not easy. It takes a lot of time. You don't have glass shops and time. I don't know, but I do know that we're going to get ourselves in a real problem if we don't address it. And from my standpoint, I don't control it. So all I can do is tell the board.
Right. Which I think we all heard you. And so I would love to see some solutions to that as well presented to us at some point, because I think you've made it clear. And I think the HR, I think the building maintenance, and some of the other ideas that you've expressed here. But I know that we're short on time. However, I do think that we should maybe just consider going over just a little bit, because we have other really important things that I want to talk to you about, because animal services, since I was on the board, it's within the last few years, we kind of dumped that on to the sheriff's department. And I think it's worth having a little bit of discussion with regard to that, to see how that is going, to see if you were provided everything within that department that you need, if there's anything else that you would like the board to know. Because we did ask you to do a heavy lift on that, and I want to make sure that we're knowing what your needs are to make sure that we can respond to them.
Yeah, animal control is most sheriffs are giving those back to their counties. They're not doing them anymore. Mendocino being the most recent. What I learned is that about 98% of what animal control does is absolutely no law enforcement component to it whatsoever, even though the appearance, because they might enforce some codes or things like that. So realistically, staffing it was difficult in the beginning. We're doing better in that area. We have an enormous amount of animals that just keep coming in, and there's a lot of different reasons for that. From cattle to horses to goats to chickens to dogs, and the dogs, of course, are a huge issue. But I think, and you'll see my Measure R request, we put in quite a few for animal services this year to try to help build that up so they have some nicer equipment, some fencing and things like that. But there's a lot of work still to do there. We've been successful on the grounds. A lot of clearing's been done. A lot of kennels and buildings and different things have been done. But we still have an old single wide trailer that's out there, and how do we deal with that? That's something that might have asbestos in it, and that's a lot of staff time for someone to deal with. To get rid of that. The expansion of that building. The kennel building, I think, is important. And then, of course, we put in for fencing. It's really, really hard right now to get fencing quotes. So last year we had, 3 quotes for fencing. And Neil made a really good suggestion. If we're going to fence it, we probably should fence the entire thing. We should spend the money and do it right and fence the entire thing. But we can't find anybody to do an actual quote. So hopefully we've got enough money from last year's quote. I think it was $25,000 to do the front on Washington Boulevard and the gate. I think, and that would go to Measure R first. There's a horse trailer for them. It's actually a livestock trailer so that they can pick these animals up. The one they currently have, the lights don't work, the brakes don't work. It's just old. It's really actually a one-horse trailer. It doesn't have a little tack area to keep medical supplies and stuff. And so what I learned was our folks not too long ago went up Low Divide Road to pick up a horse. And on their way down, they're driving an F-150 pickup with no brakes on a horse trailer to pick up livestock. And it's dangerous, and it should not be happening. And that's happening within our county. So there's a truck and a horse trailer in that Measure R request. And then the fencing, I'm forgetting something. Is that all? Oh, and then the interior of, when you walk into the Office of Animal Control, it's not set up very well. It's a really old building. So we put some money aside to do some remodeling inside. I think was it 15,000? Oh, it was 30,000. So those are things that we need to keep working on. We do have some internet issues and things like that. And at some point, if my staffing continues the way it is, then I don't really have a way to continue to manage animal control. I don't have any people to manage it. So most of that's coming through me. And you have a supervisor there right now that can be a manager pretty easy. And it would not be all that costly to make that. Whether you want to put it under a different department head or make that person a department head, that's something to discuss. That's a board choice, but that could be something to talk about.
When you come up with some of these ideas, is there a way for you to communicate with all of us about saying, hey, if ideal world, right, I would like animal control to go under either a new department or, however you want it. Is there a way for you to communicate that directly with us so that we can be considering of this? Or how does that work is what I might ask. Does the budget team hear all these things and then you bring them to us? Or how does that work, Neil?
Typically, yes, through the budget process, any kind of operational discussions, any needs, they'll bring them forward. And like the sheriff has stated, he mentioned 3 or 4 of them just now. And so all of these things are kind of progressing. So the trailer and the fence was actually approved in last year's budget. Just haven't had time to get to yet on their side from a department standpoint. So that's going to be a rollover of Measure R funds. The truck and the truck and the kennels and the office remodel are new requests that are going to try to go to the committee before the final budget. But yes, these conversations definitely would usually come through the budget team to the board in the budget report. And if the budget workshops is another good
Perfect.
place to have those conversations.
Because I don't want to lose sight of the fact that we put this load on the sheriff's department, right? We were trying to solve a problem. We put it on the sheriff's department. We're not perfect. We might have made a mistake there, right? And so I want to make sure that we're continuing to have these discussions so that, okay, that didn't work out as well as we had hoped, but let's try this now. So those are the types of things that I'm hoping will come back to us if we need to.
Yeah, and the board actually, through the strategic plan, approved one of the tasks as looking at the animal services and the structure of animal services, because we were also in that same place you are. Was it the right decision?
Okay, great.
So
Yeah,
the board did approve that.
I was hoping for a nonprofit, but see if we can get there.
And that's the reality is that law enforcement, if they are engaged, which I don't like, but they are engaged, they should be engaged only in enforcing code and in receiving the animals, taking the animals away, and making a determination and filing cases against, cruelty to animals, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The actual housing and maintaining and getting the animals adopted, that should be a nonprofit. That should not be something that we have control over, nor should we have to deal with that vast amount of animals that we are being held under that adoption process. There should be only a few animals under animal control, and their duration is usually because they're dangerous or that they're being held for hopefully the owners to recontact and get the animals back. Any other questions for the sheriff before we go to public comment?
Mr. Chairman, I know we're running overtime. I see we have Dan here waiting for.
Well, we got
Our 2 o'clock.
the district attorney waiting, so.
And yes, I appreciate that. But we have, I believe, quite a bit more to talk about with regard to staffing for the sheriff, and also maybe that maintenance personnel discussion as well. So
Perhaps those discussions should be done at a different time, since we're on the clock.
I was going to make a motion that we leave it up to staff to schedule another time to meet with the sheriff to discuss those items.
This should, I think this is something that we can direct staff to do, and bring it back to the board at a later time.
That's what I was making the motion for, yes.
I will second that motion. Can we motion? Can we have that if it's not agendized?
Yes. I would assume so, if there's a budget issue.
No, it hasn't been agendized, but
We can direct staff to bring this back at another time. Because I would like to continue this discussion. I mean, you're a huge part of this community, of this budget. And so I do think that these ongoing discussions in this forum is great, because if not, we're all just kind of getting pieces of the puzzle. And I think the public needs to know. I think that we all 5 need to be sitting up here having great discussions, and we appreciate your time to do that. So that would be my.
So Jackie,
Chair-
I'm confused. So our agenda item is to talk with the sheriff about budgets to make a motion to continue this at a different time is not appropriate?
I would say that you could adjourn this one and continue it to the end of the agenda for today. We only have 2 more people scheduled for today. If you want to continue the conversation today.
We could do that.
Thanks, Dan. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
No,
So
I appreciate
Dan McCorkle just yielded his time. For
Yeah,
those
but
at home
unfortunately,
that has not-
okay. You're going to yield 30 minutes of your time, you think? Okay. Then go forward with whatever, but let's try to speed this up so the public can get a
Chair.
comment in here.
Chair, if you don't mind. Just so the board's aware, these conversations have been taking place over this past year
I know.
about human resources, about risk management, about maintenance at the jail. They've just begun at our level, at the department level, and we've had those discussions. And so there's other things going on too. He's mentioned a lot today: stipends, wages, the jail condition. So there are tons of things that are being discussed, and how we afford to do all of those things and how we implement all of those things. What the priority is a risk manager, HR person a priority over stipends for your safety officers, or do we eliminate something else in the general fund in order to do both? So there's conversations that are ongoing for those positions. And then, like the sheriff said, it's also including the other department head, Mr. Winograd, who is the director of facilities right now, in those conversations of, is it best to have those positions housed under the sheriff, and how would that process work administratively for the sheriff, and how does he manage then internally the help desk tickets and the repairs that are needed to be done? Does he do it? Does the undersheriff do it? Does somebody else assign to that? So all those discussions that are ongoing right now.
Yeah.
So asking,
What was the motion?
I am asking that we ask staff to schedule another meeting with the sheriff so we can discuss.
So another budget meeting like what we're doing right now?
Yes.
I mean, we could do that, or I believe we have today scheduled until 5 o'clock.
Yeah. Well, and Dan's yielded his next 30 minutes. So if you can get this done in 30 minutes, Darren?
I don't know if we can or not. That seems like quite a bit.
Yeah, what I would
to
just
talk
suggest
about.
is that since we have had so much going on with Mr. Lopez saying that these discussions are ongoing, perhaps at some point we can have those discussions be brought to us. I think that is really probably a little bit more valuable use of our time. We could keep asking you questions about the budget, but we've had a lot. So what I would really like to see is the board at some point to have those brought forward to us in the public, so that we then can say, okay, this is why the decision is being made to choose this over that. So that would be my suggestion, is that though we can keep talking to you because you do have so many things that you oversee, I think we need to start seeing some of these things in action.
I agree with you, and I think it's difficult for you guys because you're always the last to hear a lot of these things, because you are that last vote that takes place. And so from our standpoint, you know, when those conversations come to light and then specific questions are asked, I think it's important that some of that information gets to you, that things are being worked on or some ideas are coming out, so that when you get the board report or that request, then you're able to make an accurate vote that's educated. And so I don't have any problem ever having a discussion about any of this stuff, but like Neil said, some of these, you know, some of them are really difficult conversations too that would take hours to figure out. But and I don't know who presents the idea of a director of animal services. I don't need to do that immediately. That's just something that we need to keep under our hats, that may be something that we have to consider, especially if our staffing remains. So, yeah, I know that you wanted to see a few things too, so I can get you some information. And
Yeah, it just seemed like there's further discussions that needed to happen. And I know it's not agendized, and I thought the right way to ask for that was to ask for a consensus to direct staff to schedule this at a later time. That's all I was asking for.
And you can continue this to a later time, but if you're asking for something else, it has
Other than budget, yeah. It's not on the agenda.
No, I get that it is on the agenda. We're just running out of time. So I was just asking if.
Well, we're
staff
wasting
schedule-
time.
I was just.
I mean, we
asking
got
if-
30 minutes extra, do the Dan's nicety, but we're wasting time, not actually utilizing the time that we've been given.
I think that, just for clarification also, these discussions about the individual positions at the sheriff's office are really new right now. The sheriff's request for staffing did not include a building maintenance person or a risk management person at his location, which is why it was not brought forward to the board yet. That he did request an analyst, which is would be on the final adopted budget request to you guys. He requested some changes for the dispatchers. He requested a bailiff changes for his personnel. Those things are all coming to the board through the final adopted budget. But the other conversations are kind of ongoing. You know, we have the process of hiring a risk management and HR director, which will also be part of that conversation of somebody located at the sheriff's office. It'd be nice to have somebody that has the direction over that department with that expertise, kind of helping in that process as well. And then also addressing the building maintenance side of things.
Great. So why don't we go ahead and just wait until we get those things brought forward? You can make yourself available to us at that time to make sure we didn't miss anything, and we can keep moving this ball forward down the field. Does that sound okay?
absolutely.
Sounds like we'll see you on your final budget. Is there any public comment?
DJ Estlund, I just have a couple of small things. I'll make it quick. I noticed that on your sheriff's budget for payroll budget under part-time temporary, you actually budgeted about 40,000 less than what you've already used year to date. And I just wondered if that was another oversight like the overtime which Val brought up, which I had a question about, but that's been dealt with. So you only budgeted 76,000, and year to date you've used 117. So I just wondered why it was down about 40,000. It looked to me like it should be about 40,000 more.
We utilized a lot of the part-time staff last year.
I beg your
Fires.
pardon?
We utilized a lot of the part-time staff last year for the fires. And so the year-to-date would be higher than what we
Oh,
actually
okay.
need for this year.
So that's fires. All right, that answers that one. Overall, with supplies, looks like it should be about 55,000 less, but you've kind of offset that already in the payroll. So I won't, because your overall expenses should be about 15,000 less. But a couple of revenue issues. City dispatch services increased from your year to date is 26,000. You've budgeted 205,000. I just wondered, that's an awfully big jump. And prior years were both under 100,000.
Yeah, it'll hopefully actually be 211,000, and that's due to the new contract with the city.
Okay.
With them covering their actual costs.
All right, and communication services are only about 5,000 more than the 2 prior years, but there's nothing year-to-date, so that just hasn't come in yet, that revenue?
That's correct.
And the same with civil process sheriff fees, I'm assuming that's the same thing?
So
The funds just haven't come in yet?
The civil office was operating at a deficit, so for us to transfer that, we would just have to transfer back to make them zero, so there will not be revenue recognized in that line.
And I won't ask about the Measure Our funds. I'm just glad you're getting them. I really don't think anything else really is that important. So thank you for your time, and thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Well, I don't know accounting at all, but I was looking at numbers, and I noticed for the SART, under 20277, that there was a record of 10,000, and then 5,000 for 23-24. So earlier this year, SART was given $40,000. I don't see that recorded anywhere, and I don't know why. But for 70900, there was 40,000 placed in that fund for the AB 109. And I know that's a different thing, but I'm just trying to figure out where the $40,000 went. For the seized funds under 91130, in 22-23, there was $7,716, but was it this year or last year that you guys confiscated $365,000, and where did that money go? It's not recorded anywhere. And other than that, that's the only thing that I need explanations for.
Do you mind asking me one at a time so I can
Oh.
address each one? Because otherwise I'm not going to remember what you said.
Oh, God. So under search and rescue,
Yeah.
the search and rescue received $40,000 this year, and that I don't see where that's recorded at.
So that's recorded under several lines. There's a rent, right, which is to help offset the building. There's
Is that a lined item?
It
What
is.
number is that?
20. It says 20262. So it says rent, but it says Measure R, so that
And it
it's
says 40,000.
24,000.
24,000. So part of it's in rent, part of it's in structures, part of it's in office supplies. So if they need to build shelves for the building to store their equipment,
Okay, so where's the other 16,000?
utilities.
Oh, so this is all under 20262.
No.
No,
Oh,
it's divided between about 4 different lines so that we can account for their expenses correctly.
okay. So then, thank you for
You're
that.
welcome, yeah.
Can you tell me about the seized funds that there was? I think it was between $350,000, $365,000 seized funds, and where was that placed?
So the seized funds that have been used, they have not fully been utilized, but you'll see in here, when they were utilized in 23-24, it does say asset forfeiture right after the line. So you'll,
What number is that?
it's in this current year's budget, not the one
Yeah,
that
I
you
know,
were
but
doing,
what?
23-24.
What's the line number?
See,
Or I think that's the numbers I'm looking at.
uh-huh.
Yeah, it's a line number.
So you should see.
40631 asset forfeiture incinerator.
406. I'm sorry. What was that? One more time.
40631. You also have 40632 as an asset forfeiture. That's a K9 vehicle. And that was,
Yeah, and there's money that, so we, of that money, there's a percentage that must be sent to the state. We sent that money to the state. There's a percent that goes to the district attorney's office, so all of that was dispersed as well. There's about 54,000 still available to the sheriff's department. It's not budgeted in a specific line because he hasn't said we need to do A, B, C, D, so that's available for use. And then there's some funding that must stay there for an educational, has to be a committee that
Gotcha.
does an educational part to that.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
problem.
As to you board members, I don't think it's unreasonable that this sheriff asked for $38 for his staff. That Measure R money is not restricted funds. My understanding is it is for general fund use. And so we need to get to getting. We got to have cops. I'm getting sick and tired of having to stay up all night because I got freaks out there where I live. And I don't know, my dog goes off. She's got good hearing because I can't hear it. But, you know, somebody comes in the house and shame on them. Because I live alone, I'm old, and I can't fight like I used to. I can use my mouth, as you well know. So thank you very much for this opportunity to speak.
thank you.
Have a great day.
Any other public comment? Seeing none, we will excuse the sheriff's office. Thank you very much for your
Thank you, guys.
participation. And Dan McCorkle, come on down.
Just while we're making this transition, Jackie.
She can file charges against you if she chooses. So.
And I just, while we're making this transition,
Are you
I
withdrawing the
had a
motion?
motion that we continued this conversation with the sheriff at a later time. And to ask staff to set that up. And I had a second. That motion still needs to be dealt with, I believe.
Samantha, are you going to take the vote?
Yeah, I'm sorry. You want me to pull the
And
vote?
just to clarify, so you're asking that the budget hearing be continued to another time, correct?
Yes.
All right, pull the vote.
To discuss the budget hearing, not
The sheriff.
To discuss the sheriff's
more of the
budget,
sheriff's budget.
because we have.
That is appropriate. That's what it's scheduled for, is the budget hearing, not to, if you're trying to make a motion to discuss staffing, that's not what was agendized today. But if it's a motion to continue talking about the sheriff-coroner budget, then that's appropriate.
That will work for me.
And that will work for my second.
Go ahead and pull the vote.
Yes. Supervisor Borges.
No.
Supervisor Starkey.
Yes.
Supervisor Short.
Yes.
Chair Wilson.
No. So that'll lock it up. Move on. Dan.